Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button. Always appreciative of all the support. Trying to reach 200 subscribers soon. Training camp, we're still waiting for it, right? Couple weeks away. Few weeks away. Yeah. Somewhere in between. Thought today we would, or whenever you're watching this, would look at 3 undrafted free agents that the Packers scooped up after April's draft, and 3 of them that I think have a shot to make the final 53-man roster. And this is an area of the team and of the roster that really can't be overlooked. Dating back decades, Green Bay every single year, as far back as 2005, have had at least one undrafted free agent make the final roster. Now, in some years, it's more glowing than others. Last season, it was one player, undrafted free agent, who didn't even start with Green Bay after the draft, but it was Braden Narvison, the kicker. We all know how that turned out. But, the year before that, it was Emmanuel Wilson, Malik Heath, and Brenton Cox Jr., all 3 who were on the roster last season and the year before that. Now, I know Brenton Cox Jr. last year was a healthy scratch for the first half of the season, but once Preston Smith got traded, a slot opened up. Brenton Cox really took advantage of his opportunities, and I thought there was a case to be made that down the stretch, Brenton Cox Jr. was probably more productive than Kingsley Enagbari and Lucas Van Ness at that same position on the defensive end. So this isn't a video where it's like a pie-in-the-sky idea or we're just, slinging crap at the wall, seeing if something sticks. Year in and year out, every single year going back to 2005, there's at least 1, sometimes 2, 3 undrafted free agents for the Packers that make the final 53-man roster. And so I'm giving you 3 names today, and I'm also factoring in all the other things that need to be considered. How this roster is sort of taking shape, areas that have sort of an overflow, some areas that could use some depth where some of these guys could sneak in. So that was all heavily factored in to this, and we're gonna start on the defensive side, and that will be a theme here. And Nazir Stackhouse, defensive tackle out of Georgia, he has that desired frame for an interior defensive lineman that Green Bay prefers. 6'4", 330 pounds. He went to a school that Green Bay. I don't know if this is coincidental at this point or not, but the Packers have drafted and scooped up a lot of players from Georgia. Eric Stokes, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Javon Bullard, all draft picks for the Packers, all high draft picks, rounds 1 and 2 in just the last few years. Nazir Stackhouse wasn't drafted, but he went to Georgia. I believe he was, I got to find this, I think he was a 3-year starter. Yeah, he was a 3-year starter at Georgia, and I think the best way to describe Stackhouse's play is he clogs holes. He eats up blocks. He is a pain in the ass for offensive linemen when they're trying to get him off his spot and they're trying to pave holes in the ground game. He did a great job at just clogging up the middle at Georgia, and that's something that's valued at the NFL level. And with the Packers specifically, they just lost T.J. Slaton. T.J. Slaton started every single game the last 2 years alongside Kenny Clark. Those were your 2 starting interior defensive linemen for Green Bay. Now, I am not suggesting that Nazir Stackhouse is going to be battling for a starting spot. That is a far-fetched thought to have. It will be Kenny Clark, and it will be Devontae Wyatt, and Wyatt, for the first time in his career, will be a full-time starter. It'll be his 4th season, former first-round pick out of Georgia. But Wyatt has only started 5 games in his first 3 seasons, and they all came 2 years ago. And so the starting spots are locked down. But when you talk about depth, and when you talk about if you're scooping a guy up undrafted, there's a couple of traits that you like, a couple of things that you think could fit you schematically with that player. And for Nazir Stackhouse, it was, you lose T.J. Slaton, who really, he wasn't a guy that was going to jump out on the box score. He wasn't a guy that was going to jump out on tape with splash plays for Green Bay. But what T.J. Slaton did really well, especially as a full-time starter the last 2 years with Green Bay, was clogging holes, was making things difficult for an offensive lineman, was how hard it was for an opposing O-lineman to get him off his spot. He did a great job of just eating up blocks. That is now gone. He's off to Cincinnati. Devontae Wyatt, he can eat up some blocks, but Devontae Wyatt is more of an interior lineman that you expect to see the splash plays. You expect to see the sacks, the TFLs, things of that nature. Kenny Clark, the grizzled veteran, kind of cut from the same cloth. Stackhouse isn't going to probably have a season in the NFL where he has 6-7 sacks, but he is a run clogger. And Green Bay is missing that with the exit of TJ Slayton to the Bengals. And again, I know Green Bay has this fascination with Georgia players. That certainly helps that Nazir Stackhouse went to Georgia. I mean, it sounds kind of weird to say that, but it's true. And when you look at how he can sort of carve out a spot, I talked about Slayton being gone. There's still plenty of competition. Stackhouse, his greatest competition might be Warren Brinson, and Brinson was a 6th-round pick. He'll be a rookie as well alongside Stackhouse. The difference is Brinson was a draft pick, 6th-round pick by Green Bay out of Georgia. And so for me, when I'm looking at how the depth can shake out on the interior of the defensive line, knowing that you have Kenny Clark, you have Devontae Wyatt, the Packers were using Colby Wooden as sort of a backup nose tackle for a lot of 2024. Brinson, the 6th-round pick out of Georgia, Nazir Stackhouse, undrafted out of Georgia, and there's other names that'll be part of the equation too, but I'm talking about trying to scratch out one of those 53-man roster spots. That last spot on the interior of that defensive line, it very well could come down to Brinson or Stackhouse or someone else. And so I think Stackhouse's biggest competition to me is his former Georgia teammate in the form of Warren Brinson. So we'll see. I think there'll be opportunity, obviously, training camp preseason, and his profile, Nazir Stackhouse's profile, sort of fits what Green Bay is trying to replace with Slayton gone. And from a depth standpoint, with that not being, like, Slayton's pretty much main responsibility was just like, hey, just go be an irritant. You know, we don't expect you to get 5, 6, 7 sacks a year. We don't expect you to get all these QB pressures, quarterback hits. It was, clog holes. Do things of that nature. And Nazir Stackhouse does that very, very well. Eat up blocks. And so we'll see. I do believe he has a chance to carve out a 53-man roster spot when you kind of look at the list for Green Bay. Second up, by the way, Mitch, I am on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always, always appreciative of all the support. I'm trying to pull up simultaneously here the full list of Packers undrafted free agents because I do want to note why I didn't add some of these at the end. And I have that list now. So second, a guy that I think could carve out a 53-man roster spot. We're staying with defense. It's going to be a theme here. Jonathan Baldwin, the cornerback from UNLV. And there's a couple of reasons for this just right out of the chute that I believe could see Baldwin sort of fast-tracked to a 53-man roster spot. The first is Green Bay they just aren't known historically throughout the years for dishing out a lot of guaranteed money to undrafted free agents. They just don't typically do it. The exception to the rule was Baldwin this spring. Baldwin goes undrafted, and he was all over the place as far as draft projections. I saw as high as the 5th round, and then I saw as low as 7th round to undrafted. He ends up going undrafted. The Packers scoop him up, and they give him $115,000 guaranteed. And for an NFL player, like, that doesn't sound much. Well, it's an undrafted free agent who doesn't even have a roster spot guaranteed or assured to him. And the Packers were still willing to just give him $115,000 in guaranteed money. And again, it veers off the tracks of how Green Bay has normally operated with undrafted free agents. So if they're willing to give Baldwin $115,000 straight up right away before, mini camp, training camp, preseason, and then rolling into the regular season, it shows they are obviously smitten on some of the things that he brings to the table. We know in Green Bay, versatility is often times the name of the game. There's some versatility with Baldwin. If you want to just break it down from a snap count perspective, in 2024, he played 92 snaps at safety for UNLV, but he played 664 at corner, but more specifically in the slot. So not much of a boundary cornerback, played closer to the line of scrimmage, closer to the ball at slot for 664 snaps for the Rebels and 92 at safety. I do think that 92 number It's not a big sample size at the safety position, but again, Green Bay they love versatility. You look at Javon Bullard last year, second-round pick out of Georgia. He started week 1 right out of the gates at safety alongside Xavier McKinney. And as the season wore on, Green Bay found with Jeff Hafley, who was in his first year as defensive coordinator, hey, Bullard's better closer to the ball. He's better in the slot. And so he sort of gravitated towards that position. It opened up the door for Evan Williams, fourth-round pick, rookie out of Oregon, to take that starting safety spot alongside Xavier McKinney, and there was just a lot more synergy on the defense once they made that switch. Baldwin's a guy who gives you some versatility, but ideally I think he is a slot corner. Green Bay's obviously going to recognize that he did play some safety at UNLV. I think the other thing that's going in favor here for Baldwin is just look at how the cornerback room is taking shape in Green Bay. To me, there are 3 locked-in spots. Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine. Not going anywhere. Jair Alexander, we didn't know. Now he's gone. They cut him loose. He's in Baltimore with his old college teammate, Lamar Jackson. It creates a big gap atop the depth chart. Now, I know Jair, missed a lot of time. We all know the numbers, 34 of the last 68 regular season games played. That means he's missed 58%. He's missed 50%. I was not a math major. He's missed 50% in the last 4 years combined. So you have 3 corners that are locked in, Nixon, Hobbs, and Valentine. After that, to me, like everything feels up for grabs. You have to include Bullard when you talk about the slot position. And I mean, I know he's listed as a safety, but he can play some slots certainly. But after that, at cornerback, you have Kalen King, who was a 7th-round pick last year and spent the entire season on the practice squad. You have Micah Robinson, who was a 7th-round pick this year. You have Kamal Haddon, who was a 6th-round pick of the Chiefs last year, and after 4 months was waived in August and then scooped up by the Packers. And then you have a name like Jonathan Baldwin. So, no team's only carrying 3 true cornerbacks on their roster. Like, there will be a 4th, there might be a 5th. And if that's the case, again, we know 3 spots are locked down: Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine. After that, it's Kalen King, a 7th-round pick last year, was on the practice squad in 2024. 7th-round pick this year, and Micah Robinson. Kamal Haddon was brought over after he was waived as a 6th-round pick by Kansas City. And Jonathan Baldwin right there in the mix, who, again, it can't go unnoted, was given $115,000 guaranteed by the Packers after they scooped him up as an undrafted free agent. There is clearly something, or quite a few things, that the Packers are enamored with when it comes to Baldwin and how he could fit this defense. And when you look at how things are taking shape on the back end of the depth chart at cornerback, yeah, Baldwin's going to be in the mix for one of those back end spots. I truly believe that, if he steps up to the plate and delivers this summer training camp preseason. Lastly, we're going to go Jamon Johnson, linebacker out of Kentucky, and you'll laugh at where he started his college career. But I wanted to go to a couple of names. Taylor Algersma, the quarterback out of Canada, was an undrafted rookie that Green Bay scooped up. To me, does he have a chance to make the 53-man roster? He doesn't, to me. I don't see it. You have Jordan Love and Malik Willis locked in. I don't think Clifford's going to make the final 53-man roster. I think Algersma could be a practice squad candidate, and a really good one at that for Green Bay. I just don't see them carrying 3 quarterbacks with how things are sort of taking shape. And Willis proved that he's a really, really dynamic and a really, really damn good backup quarterback. And so Algersma, I don't see it. And then elsewhere on offense, like Amar Johnson and Jalen White, a couple of running backs, Johnson from South Dakota State and White from Georgia Southern, they're going to have to not only really shine to try to make a 53-man roster spot or try to get a 53-man roster spot, they're going to have to leapfrog some dudes. Like, on my initial 53-man roster coming out of minicamp, I went back and forth on, well, you got to keep 4 running backs, right? Because Josh Jacobs is there. Marshawn Lloyd was a 3rd-round pick last year who was injured. And then you have Emmanuel Wilson, who has proven like, hey, if guys go down, he can tote it 15 times in a game at a very productive level. And then you have Chris Brooks, who, versatility, a better pass blocker at the running back position, and he can play on teams for Rich Bisaccia. I ended up only keeping 3 running backs on my final 53 because I just wanted to add elsewhere. And so if you look at a couple of these undrafted rookies at running back that Green Bay has brought in, Jalen Wright, Amar Johnson, they're just really going to have their work cut out for them when it comes to making the 53-man roster. You're going to have to leapfrog some proven commodities in Emmanuel Wilson, and or Chris Brooks, and I just don't see that happening. So all three that I listed are on the defensive side because I just think there's more. When you talk about making a 53-man roster as an undrafted rookie, you're not talking about a guy who's going to come in and be a starter from day one. You're talking about just scratching and clawing one of those final roster spots, and I think there's more depth concerns at some of these positions that I'm listing, talking about cornerback, talking about defensive tackle on the back end for Green Bay. Jamon Johnson, linebacker out of Kentucky, he started his career at Georgia, 3 years at Georgia, spent last year at Kentucky. The alarming thing for Johnson is almost every scout analyst notes that, his tape at Georgia looked better than his 1 year at Kentucky. And the reason that's concerning is because his last year in college, this past year, 2024, was at Kentucky. And so you're talking about a player whose tape got worse as he went along. And a lot of that could be propped up by, look, when you're playing on Georgia's defense the last few years, what Kirby Smart's got going there at the controls, it's a dominant defense. It's one first-round pick after another getting churned out. Green Bay had two of them with Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt. But then you're talking about other guys, Jalen Carter in Philadelphia. Nakobe Dean wasn't a first-round pick, I don't believe. But there's just one after another of these Georgia defensive players that are getting drafted high. And when you're playing around top-tier talent, it alleviates some pressure, and it probably lessens your plate a little bit. You don't have a full plate because you've got other proven guys around you. And I'm not saying Kentucky's defense was terrible, but when you play 3 years at Georgia and then transfer to Kentucky, it's going to be a lot more, hey, we just got a Georgia Bulldog defender to commit to come over and transfer to us, hit the portal and come over, stay in the SEC. But you're going to be expected to do a lot more. And consistency was not a word you could add to the resume for Jamon Johnson in 2024. Yet despite all that, the tape at Georgia popped. The craziest thing about Jamon Johnson is you just go back to 2022, second-team All-American and a Butkus Award finalist for best linebacker in college football. The talent is there. It was just seen more consistently at Georgia. If you're Green Bay, you're hoping to tap into that and just see where it can take him. A roster spot coming out of the preseason for Johnson, you're probably having to leapfrog Tyron Hopper and Christian Welch. Quay Walker's there, Edgerrin Cooper's there, Isaiah McDuffie's there. I like Isaiah Simmons a lot. They brought him over in free agency. I guess, Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, and McDuffie are for sure locks. I would then put Simmons maybe in that tier below, and then below that it's Tyron Hopper, Christian Welch, and a guy like Jamon Johnson. So again, you're talking about trying to carve out a back-end roster spot. And it's a former Georgia Bulldog for 3 years, then Kentucky last year. The tape didn't really pop at Kentucky. The consistency I mentioned, it dipped. But that early Georgia tape clearly stood out to the Packers. I'm guessing that's what happened. And he'll have a shot, I think, just because, again, of the numbers at linebacker. Now, it would probably take a lot to jump Tyron Hopper and Christian Welch because – can Jamon Johnson give you anything on teams at the NFL level? We'll have to wait and see that. But Christian Welch can, So just a guy that I think has a chance. Again, that early tape at Georgia was so good. 2022 second-team All-American, Butkus Award finalist. And I don't know. Inside linebacker's tricky because I do think you have three locks for sure, maybe four, depending on how you feel about Isaiah Simmons. That's a guy who can bounce around too with versatility, but I do think Green Bay, from what it sounds like, wants him kind of cemented in at one spot on the defense to really sort of maximize what he can do at one spot instead of bouncing him around, to the edge or to slot or safety or wherever. So we'll see. Those are my three names, though. Nazir Stackhouse, defensive tackle out of Georgia. Jonathan Baldwin, cornerback out of UNLV that they gave $115,000 guaranteed to after they picked him up after he went undrafted. And then Jamon Johnson, the linebacker out of Kentucky, who spent his first 3 years at Georgia. I just think Green Bay brought back most of the offense, right? Most of the main contributors, the main starters. Josh Myers left to go to the Jets, but you already know Elton Jenkins has moved from left guard to center because You filled that hole by bringing in Aaron Banks to be the left guard in free agency. So I just think there's a lot more opportunity to squeak into the back end of that 53-man roster defensively. I have questions at corner on the back end of the depth chart. I have questions at defensive tackle on the back end of the depth chart. Inside linebacker maybe a little bit less, but again, we'll see. Like at wide receiver, and I know Green Bay, who was it, Sam Brown Jr., a wide receiver that they picked up as an undrafted free agent. Well, most teams will carry 5 or 6 wide receivers. 7, you're really starting to stretch it out. But I'm looking at Green Bay. Romeo Doubs is a lock. Jaden Reed's a lock. Dontavian Wicks is a lock. Matthew Golden, first-round pick. That's a lock. Savion Williams, third-round pick. That's a lock. That's 5. Then you have McCole Hardman that you brought over from Kansas City. You have Malik Heath. You have Bo Melton. I mean, it's just an embarrassment in a good way. It's an embarrassment of riches, quantity-wise, that Green Bay has at wide receiver, that it's like Sam Brown could shine. Sam Brown could, be eye-poppingly good in training camp in the preseason. Is it going to be good enough to get a 53-man roster spot? No, but maybe that's a guy who could end up on the practice squad. I just think there's going to be ample opportunity, maybe not even ample. There's going to be more opportunities for defensive guys that were undrafted, that are on the Packers as free agents, rookies, to scoop up a 53-man roster spot than what there will be on offense. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Always appreciative of all the support. Please click the subscribe button. We're close to 200. I think we're at like 188 or something like that. So always appreciative of all the support, and we'll see you next time.